Hey guys, Tom Henderson from RESGEN here, and I want to thank you for tuning into the RESGEN Giving Life Podcast, where we hear stories and have conversations about life in Christ, everyday discipleship, and exploring ways that we as men can give life to others. Whether this is your first time listening or you haven't missed an episode yet, I appreciate you joining me for this edition of the podcast. Now, today's show is a little different than usual because I'm going to be sharing a conversation that I had with one of our speakers at RESGEN Men's Summit 2022, which took place on January 29th in front of a live audience. Sam Acho is a 9-year NFL veteran and current ESPN sports analyst. He's an author, a 2-time Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, and the founder and president of Athletes for Justice. Most importantly, he's a husband, a father, and a devoted follower of Christ. Over the next 30 minutes or so, Sam and I talk about a lot of great stuff, including the importance of putting the bad away and being kind to yourself, how every one of us is worth getting to know, and why playing for the affirmation of the Lord and not for man was the biggest and best lesson he learned during his time in the NFL. I am super excited to share this episode with you. Here's my conversation with Sam Acho. Welcome to the RESGEN living room.
Watch the game here.
Oh man, that's right. We got some big games happening tomorrow, and so we could. You just want to stay over?
Yeah, let's do it.
That'd be good. All right. Well, I know. So this has been a long time coming, like we talked about. To have you here in Sioux Falls, and what's amazing is that when you and I first talked, you didn't even know at that point that you were going to be transitioning from the NFL. You were still at that point hoping to get a contract. Yep. You had played 1 year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you were hoping that you could get one more contract, or you were trying to decide, God, do you want me to stay in the NFL or whatever? And Tom Brady was just getting traded, if I remember correctly, to the Bucs at that time. And so you're thinking, if there's ever a time to get signed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it's right now. But you had to make this transition with not getting a new contract to, asking God, well, what's next? As men, a lot of times our identity is wrapped up in our work, right? And you talked a little bit about that in your session. But when you have to go through those transitions and those changes where you were known as a football player, and a good one, who lasted 3 times the normal length of normal contracts in the NFL. So what was that like, that transition to say, I'm no longer an NFL football player, I'm an NFL veteran, but I'm no longer an NFL football player, and just wrestling with that transition in your life?
Yeah, it was really hard. It was really difficult. As much as I didn't want it to be, down the line, my identity started getting caught up into what I did, to be an NFL linebacker, right? As much as I didn't want it to be that, it just was. And so, especially that year, right? I'd never been cut before, you know what I mean? And then I'd torn my pec, like I told you about that, I signed that contract. It was a multi-year contract. Well, 1 year into that deal, later on that season, I tore my pec and I was out for the season. A few months later, I got released from the team, 1 year into my 2-year deal. First time I'd ever been cut, and it was just weird. I didn't know what was next. And I was contemplating retirement even then, and got a chance to hang out, have what do people call it, cup of tea with the Bills, right? I was with them for training camp. And then I was ready to be done. And ended up signing with Tampa Bay. But a really cool thing happened. The season ended, and I wasn't playing a ton at that point, right? Still coming off the injury. I was playing mainly on special teams. And the season ended, and usually at the end of every season, you have these exit interviews, meaning you sit and you meet with your coach or your boss, your position coach or the head coach, whatever. And our head coach at the time was Bruce Arians, who had also coached me back in Arizona. And so BA, we call him BA. BA is a guy who just shoots. He's a straight shooter, right? I love that about him. He will shoot you straight. And I was scared going into that meeting because I wasn't playing a lot. And so I'm like, okay, well, this could be the end of the road. And we had our last game. We ended up losing that last game. We had our exit interviews. He met with every single player. Some meetings were 2 minutes, some were 20 minutes. And I was like the next guy up for the meeting. And I was thinking this is probably could be the end of the line. And a minute or two before the meeting, I remember just stepping aside and praying and saying, God, like, I don't want to be scared. So, like, help. Something as simple as that. And I really felt it was almost as if the Lord said, hey, Sam, you don't have to worry. You're going to play for as long as you want to play. It's not about them. It's not about your coach. Your coach doesn't decide. The GM doesn't. I decide, as in God decides. Like, I'm their boss. I'm their, like, they got to do meetings with me. And I felt that from the Lord. And I went into the meeting thinking my time was done. And BA looked at me and he was like, hey, Sam, we love what you did. Veteran presence, right? We know you didn't get to play a lot. You came halfway through the season, but we want you back. We want you back. And so it was just like a really cool thing because I went in fearful and God was like, no, I'm in control. Then we want you back. So then it became, do I want to play? It really did, because for so long, y'all heard some of the story. It wasn't about the love of the game. It was about the identity and the things that came with it. And so I kind of went through this process of, do I want to play or not? And that's kind of what that next season of life, and that was a very difficult, I kept on meeting with that counselor every single week that season. You know, I thought I would go twice and leave. He's like, no, it's like 2 years, not 2 weeks, you know? And I started going through this process of like, why are you doing the things you do? And so it was definitely a very difficult season.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you brought up your time with the counselor, because I think that for men, you know, that's a tough hurdle to jump over, to say that, hey, you know, I want to go and visit with someone that is professional, that can maybe just help me process some things, whether that be what I'm going through now, my past. You know, this past summer, you know, I jumped the mental hurdle in my life and recognized, you know what, man, I've experienced a lot of challenges and pain in my life, and I've never really sat with a professional therapist.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know that I can have a short fuse.
Yeah.
I know that there's things that I want to shore up in my life. But for years, I kind of dragged my feet because I was fearful of, well, wait a second, no, I need to have the answers, right? Or you know, or if I go to a counselor, it's a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
But again, through a lot of encouragement from my wife, and then from my band of brothers and others that I knew deeply cared for me, they said, Tom, this is really a good thing.
Yeah.
And so I did that finally. So for you, as you really went into your times with the counselor, there's some mental hurdles that need to be jumped. So walk us through that, and then, you know, maybe just give some encouragement for guys that maybe are feeling that tug is there, but they're like, I don't know. Yeah,
well, I'm so glad you asked. So we haven't prepped these questions, by the way, right? So it's like, you know, we're getting real.
Yeah, that wasn't on my cards.
Yeah, so much had happened that season of life for me, right? So I told you all about all the good, contract and this and that, but started going to that counselor, which was also good. But also around that time, we were expecting our third child, and my wife had complications. And I remember you talking about kind of this fear of, like, you know, long story short, we had a big old baby, 10 pounds, 6 ounces, a little, like, huge, right? And he's not even the biggest one. Anyways, so future linebacker. And long and short of it is my wife had complications. And so she had to go back for another surgery, right? They had, you know, another one. And we didn't know, like, if she was going to make it, kind of thing. That was during the season of life when I'm sitting in my teammates and crying and stuff, right? So that happened like 2 weeks after that. A few weeks after that, mind you, I'm the starter, I'm the guy, got the contract, got the thing. We trade for a guy named Khalil Mack, right? Mind you, I play outside linebacker. Khalil Mack, generational talent in the NFL, plays outside linebacker. I got benched, right? And so that happened, right? Talk about identity. So that happened. And then a few weeks after that is when I tore my pec. Mind you, I'm praying, God, I'm not playing in the games, so I can't do that. So if I can't play, well, at least I'm gonna go and practice. Let me get my time and practice and have fun there. But I'm the smart guy. I know all the plays, so Khalil needed the practice reps. So I'm not practicing. God, why am I here? Straight up, like, if you want me here, let me know. If you don't, like, please tell me why. I'm praying consistently, God, show me why. And after a few weeks of prayer, boom, I tear my pec. By the grace of God, it didn't hurt. It just kind of felt weak. I was trying to block somebody on kickoff return, which I wasn't even supposed to be on. Anyways, still mad at that coach. That coach just got a new job.
Oh, man.
I'm not naming names. But anyways, I tear my pec, and it was almost as if it was like, thank you. Thank you, Lord, for answering my prayer. And I know we're going to get to this in a little bit about, what the answer. But so that happened. A few weeks after that, I had a mentor, a friend of mine, not the guy you heard about, but my former neighbor from Arizona. He posts a message on Facebook asking for permission to leave. 70-year-old dude, been married for 50 years, got kids, got grandkids, like super great in business, but he had gotten cancer and it wasn't getting better. Follower of Jesus. And he was asking for permission to leave. And my wife had seen this message. She's like, hey, go call your friend. He had messaged me actually months before, but I was busy in the season. And so I call him. His name is Jerry. And I'm like, Jerry, what's going on? And Jerry, like you, very gregarious, full of joy, like he's in your face kind of thing. And when I called him this time, he was like at like 20% of like the strength in his voice. Like he wasn't the same dude. And he was like, dude, I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to see Jesus. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with that? Like this guy had like, before I got married, he was walking me through like how to be a good husband, like all that kind of stuff. And so went through that, right? Went through that. And I mean, even just quick story, I know we got questions, but even through that process, right? Y'all remember, y'all heard the first part of the story, but I remember just being on the phone with him and just saying, dude, give me what you got. Say you want to go home, you're ready to see Jesus, like I admire you, I respect, give me what you got. Any advice, any wisdom, anything. You've gone where I want to go, you've done what I wanted to do. What do I need to know? And he said, Sam, in my 70 plus years on this earth, I've learned two things. These are the two most important things that you need to know. He said, number one, get to know Jesus. There's nothing greater on this earth, no greater joy on this earth than getting to know Jesus. And oh, by the way, it's a reciprocal relationship, right? Jesus wants to get to know you as well, get to know him. And then he paused. And I'm like, all right, well, if that's number one, like number two better be fire, right? Like, and he said, the second thing I want you to know is that you are worth getting to know. Never forget that. You are worth getting to know. And so like that was a major moment in my life where it wasn't the things you do are why I want to know you. You are worth getting to know. And so, and even like I said, meeting with this counselor weekly, like that was all intertwined throughout all of that and kind of going through this process of who are you? Process of being kind to yourself, right? That's one thing he told me often, right? He said, Sam, sooner or later, you got to put the bat away.
Yeah. I'm
like, what do you mean the bat? I'm a football player, man. You know what I'm talking about? He said, you know what I'm talking about? I said, no, I don't, right? Enlighten me. He said, the one that you used to beat yourself up with. Sooner or later, you got to put it away. And I looked at him and I said, I'll put it away, but I know exactly where to go when I want to get it again. He said, let's work through that. And so just for any men out there, we all have things we need to work through. Sooner or later, we got to put the bat away. We need to be kind to ourselves, and you can't do that alone. Yeah.
I love the idea of that God wants to get to know you. We need to get to know God. And that through that process of even just unpacking that with someone that can get us to talk about some of those things, we get to know ourselves and say, why am I the way that I am? I think the struggle that I even shared, and I know that we've talked about it, and you mentioned too, is just this need to perform all the time, and so now you've transitioned into really a different kind of a performance line of work, right? I mean, so here you are, you're now, yes, football player, helmet on, you go out there and you kill it, you maybe have a post-game conference or whatever. But now, you're on TV, your face is filling the TV screen. They're asking you for insights about this game, this player, whatever. No helmet on.
Yep.
It's just you. It's like the real you, and the pressure to perform, to say the right thing. So how is that even, that transition's a big one too.
Yeah.
And so how have you just kind of kept the mindset of saying it's not about my performance, but yet I still have to perform?
Yeah, I think oftentimes we'll go through life stages and we think that we're in that stage for that moment, but we're actually in that stage for the next moment. We'll go through stages and we're thinking that, okay, we're here for now and it's going to be great, but God puts us through these seasons to prepare us for the next season. If I learned anything in my 9 years in NFL, and I learned a ton, but the biggest lesson that I learned was how to get affirmation from the Lord and not from other people. Because you go through seasons where, okay, you play a great game and man, you get the applause. You play a bad game, oh, you're the worst ever, right? You have a good practice. Man, watch the film and it's like, man, Acho, you did great. You have a bad practice. Oh man, what's going on? You have a good play in practice. All of a sudden you look to the sideline and people are like, man, did you see that? And vice versa. And I got caught up in the, what do they think about this? What does my coach think? What do the fans think? What does my family think? And God really helped distill all those, get rid of all those voices. And it was more like, God, what do you think? I went through a season where, probably the hardest season of my football career, the joy would seem like it was sucked out of the game. And I felt like I should have been playing and other guys were playing, and felt like I was doing great in practice, but wasn't getting any recognition from my coach or boss or anything. It's like everybody else, man, Tom, you're amazing. Man, Johnny, you were great. Man, this guy, that, Sam, okay. Well, man, Bill, you were great. I was like, dude, what about me? And God was like, stop looking at them. Look to me. And so just as this season, actually fasted a good part of that football season, and just sought God's face. And he just started to mute out all the other voices. And instead of me post-play looking to the sideline, I would just pray. And it's almost as if God was like, great job. Amazing. After games, instead of me waiting to see what did the coach think and I kind of have a conversation with God. What do you think about that? Really good. This whisper, dude, awesome. And it's getting better. Right? And so it took me 8-9 years to learn that. And I finally learned that. The most fun I had was in Tampa, my last year in the NFL, because I wasn't worried about, y'all could care less what y'all think about me. I'm getting paid, I'm having fun, I'm good. And then I stopped playing. So my God, why? I learned all that. But now when I'm on TV, which is even, more exposure and more people kind of at your neck, and a lot of people deal with this in your companies and industries and families, I don't even listen anymore. I'm learning to listen just to the Lord and not to anybody else, right? Of course, you have your inner circle, you have your people you need to hear from, but. Right,
yeah. Which, and obviously, you still have to meet the expectations.
Of course, of course.
You've got to do the job.
Of course.
And study, you do the work.
Yes.
But then you trust that as you do the work, you put that work in.
Yeah.
Then you just say, okay, this is me. I've done my thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, to the glory of the Lord. We're working for the Lord, not for man.
Yeah.
Which is what you're talking about.
And even a practical step, Tom, to your point, right? We had a sports psychologist on our team, and she said, hey, after a practice, instead of you saying all the great things you did or the horrible things you did, it's never as bad as you thought or never as good as you thought. So just do one simple thing, and I could recommend this for y'all as well. She said, the idea is called good, better, how. Good, better, how. After a practice, after a day, after work, whatever, what's one thing I did good? Just one. You have to pick one and write it down. What's something I could do better? Just pick one. Not all, I was the worst. What's one thing I could do better? Write it down. And then how? How can I do it? Just write one thing. So sometimes I think we overwhelm ourselves with,
yes,
I'll never be able to, just one thing. Good, better, how. And another kind of tip that she taught me was for the perfectionists out there, people who want to, whatever. She said, when you get home, I want you to do something called the water test. Okay, what is that? Said, okay, when you get home tonight, go to your bathtub, right, and fill it up, 2-3 inches, right? Said, okay. And then go see if you can walk on it. I was like, I could try, and so she was like, you can't, right? So you're not perfect. Nobody is. Nobody can walk on water. Just remember that. So almost just another reminder of the water test.
Yeah.
Right? Be kind to yourself.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit because January is National Mentorship Month.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think a lot of communities, have are a lot of kids, a lot of people that come from rough families. They don't have enough, whether it be food or clothing and just the natural necessities, the normal necessities that we have in life. And I know that you and I've talked about mentorship before, and that's something that's been, important for you, and that just trying to make sure that you're trying to invest yourself in other people. And I think that regardless of where you live, whether you're, watching this on live stream on the West Coast or East Coast or in the Midwest, or you're here, and whether you live in Sioux Falls, Northwest Iowa, whatever, there's families, there's kids that need to be mentored, but we don't necessarily know, do we have what it takes? What right do I have to be a mentor? Do I have enough life experience? I don't have it all together, so how could I ever mentor someone else? What role has kind of mentorship played for you? And then is there anything that you would say as you've really tried to do that in your own life in certain ways that could be an encouragement to guys where they sit in their current life of ways that maybe they can involve themselves in the lives of others?
Yeah. I think I'll just answer the second question in that, because I know I mentioned a little bit about one of my mentors and friends, but there aren't enough words that could be stated about the value of pouring into someone's life. There aren't enough words that's why the enemy wants to keep us isolated and having think you're not good enough. You can't. I was sitting down with a friend yesterday, and he was mentioning about, and I this is my first time to Sioux Falls. So I knew nothing and know nothing about this area. And he was telling me about some of the relations between the Native American community. And how it's man, it's bad. It's bad. And he was telling me about a friend that he had Native American, who was made it out or successful or whatever. And he asked him, how'd you do it? All that was stacked up against you back then and now. How'd you do it? He said, number one, both of my parents came to the Lord. So that was helpful. But what was even more important was I had a mentor, someone who saw me, who invested in me, who believed in me, and that was everything. I think so many of us are afraid of stepping into places and spaces of mentorship because we don't feel like we're adequate enough. And that's the biggest lie you could ever hear. Or we feel like we don't have enough time. Whereas the truth is, there's no greater joy that you will get in life, right? So I played in the NFL for 9 years. I'm on ESPN all the time, married, kids. I wrote a book, got another one coming out. And the best part of my weeks are this 40-minute Bible study I do with 10 people on Zoom. Best part of my week. We were created for a community. We were created to pour into other people and to be poured into, especially as men. Like, y'all know more than anybody else. Like, we want guidance and wisdom, and we want to know the way. And we benefit when we give. Right? What did Jesus say? Right? You want to be the greatest of these, become like a servant. We all want to be the greatest. And the world has told us, no, you do it by just amassing all you can and using people and stepping on them. And Jesus said, no, you got to be a servant. And what do servants do? They pour out their lives for others. They I don't want to use the word mentor because there's other work. They just serve. Yeah. And so there is no greater joy on this earth than to pour out your life for someone else, whether it be your family, your kids, and then expand that to people who don't look like you, right? People who don't have what you have, right? We were sitting down like, man, how do we solve this issue or whatever? It's like, maybe it's just mentoring one person from the other part of town that doesn't look like you. Maybe it's saying, okay, like, I know you don't trust me, probably for a good reason. Is there anything I can do? Maybe it's just a conversation. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's just listening, and then go from listening to like learning, and then being available. Like, one mentor can change your entire life.
Yes. Yeah, you spoke obviously about the gentleman in your life. And I think back on my life, and I had 3 men that invested in me, no dad in the home, dad in prison throughout the entirety of my teen years and into my early 20s. And 3 men saw the potential in a skinny 14-year-old kid and invested in me. One of them's here today. And, and just the difference that makes. And so even before we came and started, doing the summit here this weekend, a friend came and gave me this quote that he had read out of a book. And he just said, hey, I don't know what's going on just in your heart and your head right now, but I just feel like I should give this to you. And on this, it was just a little like a quote, from this book. And it just talked about, we are not the message, we're the messengers. And God uses our frailties, our inadequacies, our imperfections to just bring glory to his name through word and through deed. And so our responsibility is just being the messenger and sharing what God has done in our life. And one of the things that you did, and we've only got a few more minutes here, Sam, but that we can't we need to share the gospel, obviously. I mean, because it's necessary, we need to use words to share the good news. But we also need to share the good news through actions. Faith without works it's dead, James says, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think it was last year, right? It was last year when you put some friends together, some other NFL players, I'm sure other leaders in the community, and had them come together and say, you know what, there's a neighborhood in Chicago that all they really had was a liquor store.
Yeah.
And you said, we need to provide for the felt needs, the real needs of this community. Of these families, of this community. And so you banded together and replaced the liquor store, tore down with the grocery store. I think we got some pictures that we're gonna put up of you. So tell us the story, Sam.
Yeah, so from left to right, I'll actually keep this, I'll talk about this in a second. I'll keep the picture up, but I'll name the people in a second. The long and short of it is, this is soon after George Floyd was killed. And many people were angry. We saw the news about rioting and looting and all these things. And it was like, man, we had to do something. And there was a nonprofit on the west side of Chicago that served a lot of the kids in the community, right? Like the other side of town, okay? Right off a place that they call Heroin Highway, like that side of town. And we said, what do y'all need? Like, you want us to protest? We could protest. You want us to post a tweet to the president? We'll post a tweet to, what do you need from us? We were excited, we were ready, we were invigorated. And she said, Sam, honestly, all we need, all our kids need is somebody to listen to them. Because our kids are hurting. So we showed up and we listened. And what we heard was obviously pain, sadness, and frustration, but we also saw something. After we went to this side of town that most people don't go to, they tell you don't go there. And we said, let's take a tour of this community. Let's see if this rioting is real, looting, whatever. So we took a tour, and yes, we saw buildings that were kind of boarded up and glass broken, but we also saw something interesting. There's a guy, I think he might not be in this picture, but Jason Hayward, he plays for the Chicago Cubs. I asked him, we did this bus tour, I said, Jason, on our 15 minutes of this ride, how many grocery stores have you seen in this community, on this side of town? He said, I don't know, maybe one. I said, all right, cool. How many liquor stores have you counted? We don't live here, but how many liquor stores have you counted in this 15 minutes? He said, over 10. We said, that's an issue. So what if there was something we could do about it? And so by the grace of God, we got some players together, some athletes from different teams, right? So there's Mitch Trubisky, quarterback now for the Bills. Lucas Giolito plays for the White Sox. Max Strus, he plays for the Miami Heat. Some police officers, that's the chief police officer, Chicago. Roger Goodell, NFL commissioner. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she showed up. Donita, he leads one of the nonprofits, she showed up. Some other athletes from hockey, whatever. And we bought this liquor store and we turned it into, you could change some of the pictures, a food mart. A food mart called Austin Harvest. And we actually had the kids design it. We had the kids think of the name. We asked them, do you even want a food mart in this? We listened. And then we said, okay, what do you need from us? And they said, we said, where do you get your healthy food from in this community, right? We counted, where do you get it? They said, Sam, we said, where do you eat your food? They said, we go to McDonald's or the gas station to get food. I'm like, I like McDonald's, right? But where do you get your healthy food from? They said, Sam, if we want healthy food, we have to drive 40 minutes to the next city. So yes, we would love some food in our community. Put the pictures back up. So they came up with this idea, and there should be some other ones, of this place called Austin Harvest, providing fresh food through community on the west side of Chicago, right off of Heron Highway. And so now the kids work there, and they're making money. They keep on doing some of the pictures. They're selling flowers, right? They have bank accounts now. This is in the middle of COVID, where summer jobs were canceled. Keep on passing some of the pictures. And so I guess the long and short of it is, and if there are more, keep on flipping them. Y'all can look up. But the whole point of it is that we are not helpless. I don't live on Heroin Highway. I live up in the suburbs, close to the Bears facility, because I used to play there. But I spend a good amount of my time on the west side of Chicago because I feel life and joy when I'm there. My happiest moment, top 3 moments of my life, when I got married, when we had our first child, and then third was the opening of Austin Harvest. So the lie is get all you can, and then can all you get, and then sit on your can. That's the lie. That's the lie. The truth is, if you give it away, you'll get more than you could ever imagine.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. And it all starts with listening. Listening, what are the needs? Because we can say, this is what you need.
No.
Which again, is kind of the temptation for men, I think. It's like, we see it and we're like, well, let's go fill that need because we know.
We asked them, do you even want a food mart in your community?
Yeah.
They said yes. We said, what do you want it to look like? They designed it. They said, when do you want it to open? Right? We asked them. We let them lead the way. We didn't come in as the heroes. We just came, listened, learned, asked, and then they led the way. We had finances. We brought our finances, raised $500,000 in 4 weeks, right? Then we did another fundraiser the next year and had 4,000 people give money to make that thing that was a pop-up mart that was to make it permanent. Yeah. And it'll be permanent later on this year. So God moves. We just got to show up. Just like you came here, go out there.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, again, we all live in communities where there's needs that we can meet. We have talents and gifts that God has given us. We just got to step out in faith. The coolest thing is that when we do that, when we provide for those needs, there's an openness to not just, to say, okay, yeah, you need Jesus and whatever. Yeah, okay, ultimately, yes, that is your goal. But when we provide for those needs, it opens up the opportunity for conversations.
Yes.
And it's caring for people right where they're at. And I love that. You can see why my first conversation with Sam on the phone was 45 minutes, and we developed like an immediate friendship because we could continue talking all day. I know we could. But can we just thank Sam for coming and sharing with us again? Brother, you know how much I love you and just your heart. And this has been so awesome. So thank you so much, brother. All right. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of the RESGEN Giving Life Podcast. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sam Acho today. To find out more about Sam and to connect with him further, be sure to follow him on all his social media channels at The Sam Acho. Also, if you found our conversation helpful, I encourage you to share it with others in your relational world that may find it beneficial as well. Lastly, before you sign off, I would be honored if you would take 30 seconds to rate and review the podcast, as that really is just a great way to help us both expand our reach and impact more people. Well, that's all for today, friends. Thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you next time on the RESGEN Giving Life Podcast. Until then, continue striving to be men whose life in Christ gives life to others. We'll see you soon.